I'm set. Are you guys ready? You guys good? Awesome. So, welcome to Adorama. Welcome to the event space. This is, it's been like 3 months since I've been in the store to do a store event, and I'm very happy to see that we have a pretty big group here today. I guess you all want to learn how to sell stuff. Does that sound about right?
Like Snapple?
Yes, like you want to learn how to sell this diet Snapple? Just tell them that you have an $8 minimum. That's how you upsell right there. So today I'm going to be talking to you guys about how to sell your work. And how many of you guys are like me and have had trouble over the years with selling your work, whether you're a photographer, videographer, or just a creative in the industry? How many of you are like me? Awesome. All right, well, I want to help you guys to be able to kind of break through that and become the best salespeople that you could possibly be. Before I get things started, for those of you who don't know who I am, I want to give you guys a brief introduction because, I assume there's got to be some people. Like, who here has never seen or heard me before? I know the guy in the back, most of you. Cool, awesome. So, to introduce myself, my name is Miguel Quiles, and I've been a professional photographer now for about 5, almost 6 years. However, I've been in sales for a very, very, very long time. It's almost, 2017, so it's been 18 years since I've been doing sales, and I've sold everything, with the exception of drugs. I've even sold people. I used to work at a dating company, and I used to sell, people to other people, right, to connect them. I've sold cars, I've sold real estate, I've sold technology, I've sold tangible and intangible. I've sold to consumers, I've sold to corporate end users, and in pretty much every role that I've ever had, I've always found success. And it wasn't by accident. I've always kind of had a formula that has really helped me out, and I'm going to share with you guys that same formula that I've used to basically get my photography career started. So should be a lot of fun, should be really interesting. The other thing as well, because it seems like a lot of you have not seen or heard me, so if you get the opportunity, if you go to YouTube, there's a Adorama TV, the store that you're in. They have a YouTube channel, and they have a lot of photography tutorials, video tutorials, talking about drones and everything, like everything there is to really see and know about creative stuff. So if you get the opportunity, check out Adorama TV on YouTube. I have a show there, which I think I'm at like 32 or 33 videos so far, talking about Sony products, so Sony cameras and things of that nature, showing how I use them in my professional work. The show is called The Breakdown, so if you get the opportunity, definitely go and check that out. So this is kind of a brief agenda of what I'm going to be talking about over the next 2 hours. I feel like it's a lot of stuff, so I'm going to try my best to get through it in the 2 hours, but we'll see how it goes. So we're going to talk about the 4-letter word that scares creatives. And I don't know why it does, but it seems like from my experience talking to a lot of creatives that there's a scary thing out there, and we'll kind of talk about that. The 3 reasons why people won't buy. I tend to find that a majority of the time, the lion's share of the time, there's 3 main reasons why people don't buy, and I'll talk to you guys about what that is and how to overcome that. We'll talk about becoming an SME, and that's kind of been my secret to success in every type of industry that I've ever had to sell in. Becoming an SME has really helped me, and I'll tell you guys what that is and all the good stuff about it. Who and where are your customers, and also what is your value proposition? We'll talk about that in some length. We'll talk about why it's important. We'll talk about guiding the sales process, which is very, very important. If you don't have a sales process today, then you're kind of like the driver who's driving a bus, and you just got your hands off the wheel and your foot on the gas, and wherever the bus goes is where it goes. Hopefully it stays on the road. You have to have a sales process in place, and I'll talk about my process, and maybe there's some things that you can implement in there as well. We'll talk about knowing your ABCs, and we'll elaborate on what that is. It's not your alphabet, because you guys would laugh at me if I tried to teach you that. We'll talk about the differences between active and passive marketing. This is something that I see a lot of people who are fearful in selling. They tend to struggle with this quite a bit, and so we'll kind of break this down in depth. We'll talk about branding. We'll talk about the success or the destruction cycle. It's actually called the success cycle, but it could very easily be the destruction cycle if you don't do things the right way. And I'll kind of describe that in detail for you as well. Give you guys a reading assignment, some books that I have actually read over the past few years that I've actually read and reread and reread over the different years that I've been doing sales that have really helped me out. I've got a lot more, but I figure I'll give you a few books to kind of get you guys started. And at the end, if we have time, we'll have a formal Q&A. But what I would like to do is I would like to get any preliminary questions. I know all of you guys all have different experience, different backgrounds. And while I've created a presentation that I think covers the basics of it, if you guys have specific questions about sales, I want to be able to address those directly as well. So I'm going to open up my WordPad here. And what questions do you guys have regarding selling that I could address at some point during the presentation? And don't be shy. This is like the sphere of safety. Yes?
Well, just starting out on basic. Just basically in New York City, what is the rules or the laws of just if you want to sell in the street, parks, and things like that?
Okay. We'll just say the rules of selling in public. All right. What else?
How to set prices.
Okay. All right.
Not just prices for your images, but for shooting events.
Okay. So pricing for events. All right. Oh, yes?
How to get from friending people on LinkedIn to getting more from it.
Okay. How to get from, or basically, let's see, how can I put this? Maybe how to turn a prospect to a sale? Okay. Somebody on this side? Yeah?
What festivals and venues, markets?
Okay. So basically where to find events to sell? How to choose? Okay. Choose events. All right. What else?
How to determine what events to shoot, what spec, and what to do for that.
Okay. So in other words, when to work for free and when not to?
Yeah, like how to gauge the value of
Okay. How? Gotcha. To gauge value. Put exposure. What else? Mm-hmm.
Is there a way to turn inexperience into an asset?
Yeah. Turning inexperience to an asset. Very good. What else?
I know it's maybe covered in pricing, but maybe licensing.
Licensing images. Okay. Licensing images. All right. What else? Any other ones?
How to stand out beyond the crowd.
Okay.
So many
Stand
images out
out
there.
from the crowd. Awesome. All right. So I got these all written down. At some point throughout the presentation, I got a feeling like I'm going to cover quite a few of these already, but I'll come back to this at the very end just to make sure that I've specifically addressed these particular questions. So let us get started. Let's see. All right, so the four-letter word that I see that a lot of creatives are very, very afraid about is this concept and this idea of selling. And I don't know where it comes from. I feel like a lot of the creatives that I've talked to when it comes to figuring out how to sell their work, they're very shy about it. They tend to say, well, you know, I do this because I love it, and you know, it's this intangible thing, and maybe sometimes you yourself may not have the value for what it is that you do, and so when you try to sell it to somebody, it just, how many of you guys does it hurt on the inside when you try to sell something, like sell your work? It used to hurt me a lot. I mean, I used to feel like, man, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure if I could even, like, is it even worth selling? Like, is it even good enough for somebody to buy? And I struggled with this for a very long time. Obviously, way back in the day when I first started with selling. And nowadays, when I talk to a lot of creatives, you know, I'll see beautiful work. And I'll ask them, where are you selling your work? Like, how are you making your money? And a lot of the times they're like, well, you know, I don't know. I mean, this is my passion. I just do this for, you know, it's my side thing. Like, I just like doing it. And I don't know, for some reason, anytime you say, well, why don't you sell your work? Oh, no, I don't know. You know, they get very nervous about it, very scared. And so I don't want the idea of selling to be this like dirty 4-letter word, right? It doesn't have to be. You know, the art of selling is the art of basically getting your way. And we've been trying to do that ever since we were little kids, right? Ever since we were little babies and we would cry, and what would happen? Hopefully our parents would feed us, right? And I got the sale, right? Cha-ching. Selling is not always about getting money in return. And I think this is another part where a lot of people sometimes mistaken selling with a lot of other dirty things. It doesn't always have to be about money. You know, I think your question was asking about exposure. And sometimes exposure is a very perfectly fine thing to get in exchange for work that you're providing to a client. But you have to do it the smart way, and you got to do it the right way. We'll kind of talk about that. So let's cover the 3 reasons why people don't buy. And these aren't the only reasons. Obviously, there's a million reasons why somebody may or may not buy from you. But I've kind of diluted it to the top 3 reasons why people will not buy from you. And so the very first one is that they don't like or understand you, right? So this has happened to me in the past where, for whatever reason, maybe it's because I'm dressed like a gangster, you know, or dressed like a thug, I'll start to walk up to somebody and try to sell them something, and they're like, whoa, hey, you know, and they grip their wallets, right? So it could very much be that the person isn't buying from you because, well, they just don't like you, right? And so, or maybe they don't understand you. Maybe you're talking to them, and because you're talking way over their heads, or maybe you're making them feel like they're inferior to you, like you're very intelligent and they just don't know anything, right? Like if I started to talk to you guys about computers and you know nothing about computers, and I start talking about DDR5 RAM and, you know, BIOS upgrades and all this kind of stuff, you'd be like, I don't really like this guy because he's talking way up here and my understanding is like way down here, so I'm not going to buy from him, right? So there's many different reasons why someone may or may not buy from you, and the one big one is that they don't like you or they don't understand you. The second is that they don't like or understand the product that you're trying to sell. So it's happened many times where I have great rapport with a client, whether I was selling cars or selling real estate, where they just really like me, they like talking to me, they're, yeah, Miguel, oh, that's great. And, you know, they're just walking around smiling, having a good old time. They're inviting me to their, you know, events and stuff on the weekends and inviting me out to lunch and dinner. But they don't buy because they don't like the product. Or even worse, they don't understand the product. And in photography, I think this happens probably more so than most other reasons why people don't buy, which is that they just don't understand what you're selling. How many of you guys right now, honestly, could say that you totally understand inside and out what you sell? All right, we got a few hands, right? So the majority of us, we end up in a situation where we're photographers or videographers. Actually, let me ask, just to get a gauge for the room, how many of you guys are photographers? All right, how many of you guys are not photographers and are learning to sell or wanting to learn how to sell things? Videographers, cool. What do you do?
I just picked up a camera, 6 months ago. So
Nice.
I don't consider myself a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself someone who loves
Someone who's got a camera.
Right.
We're gonna fix.
get there, though.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
It's not
Hey,
complex,
hang with
so-
me, and we will get there.
Okay, cool.
What do you do in the back? Nice. Very cool. Very cool. So for those of you that aren't photographers, you're aspiring photographers. You're hoping to be able to sell your work. And what I found is most of the time when I talk to photographers and I'll ask them, well, talk to me about what you sell. Like, what is it that you offer to your clients? And they're like, well, I take pictures. And I'm like, okay, so how does that process work, right? How does that process work of buying a photograph or me hiring you? And they're like, well, I mean, you know, they just tell me what they want and I just give them a price, and, you know, it's just very flimsy. And it's like, okay, well, that's why. They don't understand what you sell because maybe you don't understand what you sell, right? I mean, that's happened to me many times. When I started in a new career, like when I started in photography as a pro 5 years ago, I really didn't understand my product. I mean, I knew that I wanted to sell great pictures to clients, but how do you do that? How do you package it? Do you sell one photo? Do you sell 100 photos? You know, where's the line? Do I have to sell prints? Can I just give them a digital file? Can I just put it on a USB? So I didn't understand the product, so I found a lot of resistance when maybe I might find somebody that wanted to have the conversation, they liked me, but they said, yeah, man, I don't know, I just can't buy because I really don't understand what it is that you do. So that's one of the reasons why people might not buy. The third reason is that they don't like or they don't understand your pricing. So again, same scenario. They may love you. They may love talking to you. They may understand your product perfect. They're like, man, you know, that's awesome. You do these albums or you do these, you know, digital files or whatever the case might be. That's great. That's awesome. And then you hit them with the hammer, right? This is how much all of this wonderful stuff is. My pricing is fill in the blank. And they're like, ooh, yeah, I'll get back to you on that, right? I need to think about that. Or I need to go talk to my spouse or my significant other. Or, you know, I need to go check my bank account. Whatever excuse it is, right? They may not like your price when you hit them with what your pricing is. Or they don't understand how your pricing works. I've actually talked to photographers when I ask them, okay, well, how much do you charge for what you do? They're like, hang on a second. And they pull out like this price sheet. And they're like, okay, so depending on what you want and depending on the time of day and the alignment of the moon and the stars, your pricing is this. And it's like, dude, that's too complicated, you know? That's really complicated. And so people not understanding your pricing is a very common thing that happens, not just for us as creatives, but just in general for whatever walk of life it is that we're in. So it's crucial that people like you, that they understand what you're saying when you're talking to them, that they like and understand your product, and that they like and understand your pricing. And a lot of that just has to do with just being simple and being direct with what it is that you do. So we'll kind of talk about this in depth. Actually, before we continue, any questions about these 3 reasons? And don't be shy, everybody. We're honestly like, what I see tends to happen, and I talk about this in every single one of my events, people have questions and they're just like hanging on to it because they don't want to be the one to ask. And then I get home and like my email box is like flooded with questions. And then what's funny is like the majority of the questions I'll get, I'm like, I just got that question in the last email, got that question in the last email. I'm like, dang, if one person would have asked, you know, all these people that just emailed me would have gotten this like benefit of this answer. Plus I could have gone to sleep early, which would have been nice. Question? Yes. So she was asking, when you're just getting started, how do you determine your pricing? And so I'll kind of talk about this a little bit early, but when it comes to setting up your pricing, there's a million different ways to do it, right? There's a lot of different ways. I'm not going to tell you there's a right or wrong way to do it. I'll tell you the way that I do it, which is that I take a look at my market, right? Whether it's my local market, whether it's my regional market or global market, if you guys are selling globally, to take a look and see what is the market asking for services of my caliber, right? So all of us are at a certain level with our work. If we're starting out, we're not going to be able to command that very, very high pricing that maybe the Annie Leibovitz of the world or Mario Testino's of the world, like we're not going to be able to command that type of pricing. So finding out, even if they're in your market, finding out what they sell their stuff for doesn't really help you, right? So you have to take a look in your local markets and see, well, based on the type of photography that I'm in, what are they pricing their stuff at? And then looking to say, okay, what are they offering at that price? And then trying to figure out in your own way how you can go in and offer what you offer and offer it a little bit different. Because you obviously don't want to go and offer the same thing, right? This isn't like undercutters photography, you know? Did anybody ever watch Tom Green's show back in the day? If you haven't, I'm gonna invite you guys to look on YouTube and look up a skit that he did called Undercutter's Pizza. It is the most hilarious skit. And the premise of this is that he would wait for a pizza delivery driver to like pull up to someone's house. He'll follow them when they leave the pizza place, pulls up to the person's house. And as that pizza guy is getting out of the vehicle with the pizza that these people ordered to deliver it, he has like a toolbox full of like different condiments and different like green peppers and onions and pepperoni. And he's got a pizza that's just bare and blank. And he's walking right next to the pizza guy like, you know, oh, they just happened to order 2 different pizzas, right? And then he gets up to the owner's house and he's like, hey, how much did you pay for that? What kind of pizza did you get? I could go ahead and I could make you a pizza, you know, and what kind of toppings do you have? And he just opens up a toolbox and they're like, no, we don't want that, right? You're not going to be that. You're not going to be that type of photographer where you're trying to like undercut your competition. You're going to try to make your offerings different. So maybe if they're basically offering prints, maybe you might want to go the digital route. You know, in some way, shape, or form, you have to evaluate what your competition is doing in your area and try to figure out how you can establish value so that you can price yourself. So it makes it a lot easier once you're actually in the process of doing this. When you look and you say, okay, they're selling, you know, maybe mini sessions for 50 bucks. Well, there's a lot of downsides to doing mini sessions, so maybe I could offer this instead. And they offer mini sessions at this price. So because I can build a lot of value on what I do, I'm actually going to price my stuff much higher than the competition. So we'll talk about it a little more in depth, but that's kind of the Reader's Digest version. Yes?
So this day, like in today's market, is it still, I guess, valid to have like a sitting fee for the shoot and then build your package on top of that?
Yeah, so he was asking about sitting fees, and is it still kind of relevant today to have a sitting fee? And yeah, it's totally relevant. I mean, it just depends. Yeah, I mean, it just depends, though. It depends on, again, the standard of work that you're delivering to a client. You know, for myself, I offer something like a sitting fee, and it's basically just a booking fee that just to work with me, you have a set price. This is before you get any files, before you get any images, just for me to show up and work, there's a flat rate. And a lot of photographers don't do that. They just say, okay, well, we'll give you 20 retouched images and we're gonna do it for 50 bucks. And it's like, okay, how much is your time worth, right? Because if you have to go and they tell you, well, we're on the New Jersey side. So now you gotta go and take the transit, you gotta go, you know, over to Jersey. That right there could cost you, you know, 10 or 15 bucks just to travel there, plus your time, plus, you know, all these different things that might come up. Maybe you go and you sell this job and your computer just dies on you, or your software license goes out on you, whatever the case might be. You always want to sell things in such a way to where you have that padding, you know, and that's how I price myself. My sitting fee is just for me to show up, and then they will basically go ahead and buy whatever images it is that they like. And because I'm comfortable with selling, it's an easy process, right? I can get them to buy way more than what they originally thought they were going to buy, just because of the different techniques that I'm going to teach you guys here. So sitting fee is totally relevant. Any other questions on 3 reasons why people won't buy? No? Cool. All right, let's continue on. So I was talking to you guys about becoming an SME, and you're probably like, what the heck is an SME? SME is a subject matter expert. And this is something that has basically helped me out over the years, whether I was selling photography, cars, real estate, technology people, whatever the case might be. Becoming a subject matter expert in that field was crucial in me being able to sell my work. People like to work with people that know what they're doing and what they're talking about. And if you don't believe it, try going here in Adorama. Maybe everybody that works here, they're all highly trained. You're going to enjoy the process of being able to talk to them when you talk to them about cameras and lighting, because these guys are experts, guys and gals, are experts at what they do. If you go somewhere else and you get that first day employee who's like, man, I'm just here, I don't know what the heck is going on, it's going to hurt, right? It's going to hurt when you try to do business with somebody that's not an expert in their field. So the cool thing is we live in 2017. When I started and I feel like I'm old now. I feel like right now you guys should be seeing me in black and white. Because when I started back in like the late 90s, the internet really wasn't a thing. So trying to become a subject matter expert in anything, whether it was, I worked at a place called Dockside Imports. They sold like wicker furniture and like carpets and tchotchkes and stuff for the house. And it's like, if I wanted to become an expert, I had to work there. Hopefully I had a boss or somebody that worked there that did it for a long time where I could learn from them. And obviously that would take time as well, because there's only so much brain dumping that a person can do on you within a course of an 8-hour day. But becoming an expert back then would require you in photography to get a job somewhere as a photographer, maybe at a small studio. Maybe you'd have to go to college and take college courses to try to become an expert. And even after you finish your college courses, you're probably not an expert yet, right? How many of you guys went to school for photography? Any photography students? We got a few. Awesome. Did you, for those of you that went, did you feel like when you graduated that you were experts at photography? No, right? So, you know, there's certain things you could have done. You could have apprenticed under a photographer, but even if you apprentice under or become an apprentice under a professional photographer, that still technically is going to take a while to get you to the point to where you're an expert. So nowadays it's so awesome because if you want to be an expert at anything, the information is out there. There's books, there's blog articles. When I was on the way here from New Jersey, I'm watching YouTube videos on my phone. I'm trying to build a garden in my backyard. I know nothing about gardens. I know how to kill plants, but I don't know how to grow stuff. And so, I want to be an expert at that, right? I don't want to go and spend all this money buying dirt and seeds and then sit there and wait and wonder why my tomatoes aren't growing. So in order to be an expert, what did I do? I'm on the way here. I'm watching a video on YouTube, not just one, but multiple videos on YouTube because everybody's got their own ways to do it. And I say, okay, so I have a pretty good baseline of the type of, you know, dirt that they're using, you know, basically how they're building their little gardens. And so very quickly you can become very competent in your field of expertise. So in photography, Adorama TV, as a prime example, they have thousands of videos on photography. So if you feel like you don't have a handle yet on just the basics of like how to take a great photo, utilize your resources. You know, utilize websites like Adorama TV. Utilize, you know, even people like myself. I have videos on my own YouTube channel. There's resources like Creative Live that are out there that do free, you know, videos where they teach you about photography. So, in other words, becoming a subject matter expert in 2017 is much easier than it's ever been, right? Any answers that you want to find out to where before you had to go to a library or you had to go knock on somebody's door, you literally could be like, hey, Google, you know, what is blah, blah, blah? And it tells you, right? So that's why it still kind of blows me away when a lot of people are like, well, I don't know how to do this or I don't know how to do that. I literally, and I want you guys to try this out because it's ridiculous. You could even, if you don't know how to wipe your butt, you could do a search on YouTube, how do I wipe my behind? And it will show you tons of videos. So there's literally anything that you guys could think of. There is a video or an article or something out there that's going to tell you how to be able to do it. Literally the most ridiculous thing. How do I pick my nose? And it'll show you, like, here's a tutorial. You take your finger, put it in your nose. And end the video. Thanks for watching, right? So become a subject matter expert because it's going to help you. When you're an expert at photography and you're an expert at all aspects of what you do, it makes it very easy for you to sell. If you're not an expert at what you do, you're going to get clients. Some people might be really easy. Some might be difficult. You might get somebody like me if you're trying to sell me photography, and maybe you guys have run into this where you get clients that maybe they even have better cameras than you do, and they'll start asking you questions, and sometimes they're just asking just to test you out, right? How many of you have ever had that happen to you before with a client where they're just asking you questions and they know darn well what the answer is, they just want to know if you know it, right? So this happens all the time. So it's really important that you establish yourself as an expert. And how you do that is by utilizing your resources on your off time. Please don't do this in front of clients. You know, when you're trying to work on something, don't sit there and, you know, Google, how do I, you know, take this photo with studio lighting? Like, you don't want to do it at that point. You want to do it on your own time. Any questions about becoming a subject matter expert? In the front, in the middle, in the back? Is it pretty clear? Yes.
Even given that you can get all this information online.
Yes.
Do you still value the opportunity to work with professionals?
That's a very good question. So he was asking, given that you can get this information online, you know, is there still value in basically working under an apprentice? And the answer is yes, absolutely. To this day, and a lot of people, some people like the closest friends of mine know this, but even for me, I can sit here and spew out titles that I have and things that I've done, but even for myself, I still assist people. I still second shoot for my friends. I still act as a lighting person for, you know, working photographers that are out there. I've never, it's very important, and this kind of talks to the heart of your question, which is don't ever think that you're too good to basically start over and to just be a student. I will always be a student of the game. There's never going to be a point in time where I'm like, nah, I know everything. You know, I just know how to do everything. I do it excellent. You know, that time is never going to come. I'm always going to be humble. I'm always going to be resourceful. And I want you guys to adopt that same attitude. Don't ever feel like, man, I'm too good to be carrying, you know, this working pros stuff. No, if that working pro is going to help you to refine your process and to get better, guess what? Scoop up those bags and start walking. You know, that's really how I've learned a lot of what I've learned. I've gone to workshops, I've watched videos online, and then I've actually assisted a lot of working pros that basically gave me knowledge that when I can condense that all together, I turned it into my own style. And it's been something that to this day, I mean, I work full time as a photographer. I do very well for myself and provide for my family and everything else. And so that could be it for you. If you want it to be a side hustle, it could totally be a side hustle as well. Whatever you desire it to be, it could totally be that. But don't ever get to the point to where you feel like because the resources are so plentiful that you're beyond doing like the grunt work, right? Because heck, I still do it to this day. So very, very good question. Any other questions about becoming a subject matter expert in the back?
So with all the crap that's online, how do you know what to learn?
Yes. So he was asking, with all the stuff that's online, how do you know what to learn? And what I would tell you is learn it all. You know, within your field of expertise, learn everything that you need to know. Every single day, you should hopefully be learning something new. And it doesn't have to be like a revolutionary thing, right? Like the first time you ever use your camera and do something with off-camera flashing, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this picture came out. It doesn't always have to be that big light bulb moment. It could be something really easy, like how somebody sets up their bag when they go out for a shoot. I don't know about you guys, but there was a period of time when a client would hire me and I would pack everything. I'm talking about everything. I would come out like, you know, if you ever played video games and you see the final boss and the final boss just has like all this gear and stuff on them, that was me. Because I didn't know what I needed, right? I would just go to a shoot and it's like, I got every lens. I got 10 backups for my lights. I got, you know, small, medium, large, extra large stands when it's like, dude, you just need one stand, you know? And so I learned as I would go out and I would see videos and things of that nature. And I'm like, wow, they did this entire project and they worked out of a backpack or out of a messenger bag. That's crazy. How did they do that? Maybe I'm overthinking this whole process. Maybe I'm bringing all this junk and just wearing myself out. So you could always learn. And I would tell you, learn as much as you can, wherever you can. And once you learn it, then you could decide, is this something I want to adopt for what I do? Or is this maybe something you put in your back pocket for some other time in the future? But in other words, don't be too picky and too selective. Learn everything. So long as it's within your scope of expertise, whether it be portraiture or whatever, shooting weddings, shooting events, learn everything humanly possible. So let us continue. So who and where are your customers? This is a very important thing to really understand. If you're going to try to sell your work beyond trying to price things, you need to understand the demographics of the people that are available or open to buying what you do. So understanding, is your work kind of geared predominantly towards men or women? For example, if you're trying to, maybe you're a maternity photographer, right? If I'm trying to photograph pregnant women and I'm marketing to men, do you think I might run into a problem? Probably, right? If I'm trying to do pictures of kids, you know, and I'm marketing directly to the kids, right? That's going to be a problem. Because most kids, they're like, man, pictures, no way. Video games, yeah, right? So you need to understand your demographic. You need to understand, do they have the purchasing power to be able to buy whatever it is that you're trying to sell? I know a lot of times people are like, yeah, you know, I want to be a fashion photographer and I want to have these huge day rates and I'm going to market to this segment of the population. And it's like, man, they can't afford you. You know, maybe you live in a market where, you know, the average income might be $30,000 a year. And then one photo shoot with you might be like 10% of their yearly earnings. Guess what? You're going to have a problem, right? So it's really important to understand your demographics before you attempt to try to do anything with them. What's the age range of the people that you're trying to market to? I have a lot of photographer friends of mine who market specifically towards more mature people. One of my photography buddies, he does a 50 and Fabulous. That's his product that he offers. Now, hearing 50 and Fabulous, if he was marketing to teenagers, do you think he's going to have a problem? When a teenager comes to his website and sees 50-somethings on the website, they're going to be like, no, I don't think I want to work with this person, right? So understanding your demographics is really important. Understanding whether you're going after a business customer or a consumer is also very important. When I started my photography career, I used to go after consumers, but what I quickly started to do was I switched over to dealing with companies. So the lion's share of my headshot and portrait business actually comes from companies that are looking to have their executives or their employees photographed to update their websites or update LinkedIn. So if I know that businesses are who I'm trying to target, then there's certain things that I'm going to have to do to get their attention. And the things that I do to get their attention is not the same thing that I'm going to do to get the average Joe Blow off the street to hire me. It's a totally different skill set, totally different situation. And if I miss that mark, if I'm trying to market to a business client and I try consumer techniques, I'm going to fail, right? It's not going to work, or my traction will be limited. Understanding where they're located is very important as well. So are you trying to sell to people in your local market, like in your neighborhood, in your town, in your city? Or are you trying to sell regionally? You know, we're here in New York. Are you trying to go and work in Connecticut and, New Jersey and Delaware? Is this a regional situation where you're trying to market to people in this area? Or are you like a big fish and you're like, you know what? Maybe you've saved up a lot of airline miles with whatever it is you've done over the years, and you say, I'm global, man. I'm international, Mr. International or Mrs. International. If that's you, great. But you need to understand where your clients are located, because these things are going to impact how you're going to be able to sell and market to these people. So, if you're trying to market some high dollar type of package and service to an area that is a depressed area, you're going to run into trouble. And vice versa. If you try to go the value route and you're trying to go for these like $50 mini sessions and you're somewhere like the Hamptons, guess what? They're going to see your $50 mini session. They're going to be like, nah, we're good, right? Because if everybody else can afford it, there's no exclusivity to it. And they don't want to work with people that don't have like value, right? That they don't have that luster. That's why they go out and buy the Gucci's and the Pradas and the Chanel's. They buy that stuff because they hope that other people don't have it so that they can feel good about the fact they bought it, right? How many of you have ever bought like a designer brand or like a name brand of any sort? Most everybody, right? How many of you, when you go shopping and if you eat cereal, you buy Kellogg's over the store brand, right? Because you just think it's better, even though I've tried store brand stuff and sometimes it's okay. It doesn't taste like cardboard, but understanding these things is going to help. The other thing is, where do these people congregate? So I'm going to give you guys an example of this. When I started years ago, I used to sell technology. I worked for a store called CompUSA. Does anybody remember that store? I used to do business sales at CompUSA. It was like a brand new department within the organization. And so they gave me a vertical, right? They said, you are going to be the guy that sells to hospitality groups. So you're going to sell to hotels or anybody that's involved in hospitality. We have a team of 8 people. You are the hospitality guy. So any of these customers that come in, if they talk to the other guy that's in banking or finance, and it's a hospitality client, they're going to say, Miguel, can you come up front? And that's my customer. And so what I quickly started to realize was if I wanted to deal with these people, first, my target was the IT guy or IT person at these hotels. And I had to figure out, where can I go to see these people outside of just like visiting them at the hotel? Because I have done it before, but it's easier for you to try to figure out where these people congregate so that you can have natural encounters with them. So what I would do is I would go to a website like meetup.com and I would find tech meetups. Because guess what? If I go to a tech meetup, chances are there's going to be techie people that go to a tech meetup, or it wouldn't be called a tech meetup, right? So when I worked there, I would pull up these tech meetups and I would set my schedule at least 1 or 2 times a week. I would go to these events, wear a nice shirt and tie because, again, I was selling computers, software solutions, and just work the room. Hi, how are you? My name is Miguel Quiles. Tell me about yourself. And I would never tell them that I work for CompUSA or what I did. I always let the person kind of introduce themselves and talk about themselves because guess what? Everyone loves talking about themselves, right? So it's really easy. They'll start talking to me. Oh, I do this, and I work at a hotel, and I'm IT manager. Oh, really? Oh, that's awesome. How many people do you have working for you? Oh, I've got 3 people working for me. Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. You working on any like big projects? Yeah, man, we're doing this like big IT implementation this week, and oh, that's interesting. Do you have everything that technology-wise, staffing-wise? No, I mean, we're having some trouble with the staffing because it's a big project. Well, that's awesome. My name is Miguel. I work for CompUSA, and just by chance, I actually help with staffing. I've actually worked with a lot of hotels that are understaffed, and I'm able to provide them the human capital they need to be able to do their jobs. Oh, really? Oh, I need to get your information. Very like natural thing that wouldn't have happened if I didn't know where these people would congregate. So for myself today, I told you guys that I'm trying to sell corporate headshots, right? There are meetups all over the place, young professionals, tech meetups, and guess what? To this day, shirt and tie, I go to these events, shake hands and kiss babies, as I always like to say, and just talk to people and find out what they do and where they work and try to market my headshot services to these people. And what's really funny is out of all of these events, even though I invest several hours of my time, plus I have to drive there, plus I got to get dressed for it and all that, but I always end up getting connections. And even if it's not that specific person that I'm looking to do business with, they might be able to refer somebody to me that would be a great client. So perfect example, when I first moved here to New Jersey, went to a tech meetup, they were telling me, this person was telling me what they do. They work for this hospice organization. And so we were talking and they said, yeah, we've bought a bunch of new locations and all of these locations, we're trying to streamline the websites because their websites are different than our like corporate websites. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Do you know if they have like photos of the, people that work there and executives? They're like, yeah, I know they were talking about redoing the website and I assume they're going to have to do the pictures as well. And I said, well, here's my information. I would love to find out who that person is that's handling that website development because I would love to talk to them about headshots. So fast forward about 2 days later, I get in touch with that person. I sent them an email and they wrote me back and they said, hey, I'd love to talk to you because yeah, we do need to actually not only get headshots of all the new locations that we purchased, but the current locations we've had headshots done over the course of like 7 or 8 years. So obviously in 7 or 8 years, the style tends to change because they had different photographers each time. They said, we want it to be where when you go to any one of these companies or these like locations, that they all look like one another. I was like, man, I'm your man. So from that one interaction that I had with that woman at this event, I ended up booking 23 different locations that had the lowest or the smallest group was like 7 or 8 people. The biggest group for the day was like 20 to 30 people. So I worked out a flat rate and said, hey, for each one of your locations, I will set up my stuff in a conference room because it's going to be very hard to get them to come to my studio somewhere in Connecticut. One of them was way up in like Ithaca, New York. I've never been there before. And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I'm like, holy cow, this is like 4 or 5 hour drive. I'm like in Canada, So I didn't know any better. So I took a hit on that one. But there were some locations that were closer to me where it made up for that. And just in volume and getting 23 different locations, I made up for it. So understanding where these people congregate is the most powerful thing. And again, where do you find out? Think about it. Think about where do these people congregate? Where can I go online and find places where people who may be my ideal client, where I can get in front of them and talk to them and have a natural conversation about what I do. So any questions at this point? Yes.
You mentioned about the
Mm-hmm.
you did a flat rate per location,
Mm-hmm.
so it doesn't matter how many people.
Yep. So he was asking about the pricing and that I did for this corporate headshot job. And for that particular client, I did a flat rate. The flat rate was pretty high, but it basically, the value that I provided to them was great because for them, they looked at it as, okay, even though it wasn't cheap, right? The price I gave them was not cheap at all, but it was less than what they would have paid if they would have individually had to get 20 or 30 different people getting headshots. Not only that, but it would have been a lot more to basically pay for the hours that it would take. For example, the people in Ithaca, to pay all those people to come to my studio in New Jersey, that's going to be a lot more money than what I charge them. So I think about all these things, and I'm going to talk to you guys about how I come up with that type of pricing. But yeah, absolutely. I did a flat rate price, and it made it very easy because I said, okay, we got 23 locations. This week I'm doing these 4. So I'm going to send you the invoice for those 4. Next week I'm going to do these 2 because they're way far out. So I'll invoice you for that. And it's always just a flat rate. There's never this argument about, well, how much are you going to charge me here? How much are you going to charge me there? Flat rate for everybody, and it worked out. So yes, very back. Hold on, I can't hear you. Let me step up here a little bit. Meet me halfway. Yes. So he was asking, have I ever had to walk away from a client because either they were just difficult or they were problematic? Yeah, absolutely. I've had clients that from square one, I knew they were going to be a pain in the neck, right? And so when I got that odor, when I got that hint of like, this is going to be, just one of those types of shows, then I basically priced myself out of doing the work with them. So I'll turn around and they'll say, well, we want this and we want it delivered at this point and blah, blah, blah. And it's got to be in this type of package. I'm like, cool, no problem. $25,000. What? $25,000? Yeah, $25,000. That's what I normally charge for that. Okay, I'll get back to you, right? Because again, the reason why they don't buy from you, they don't like you, they don't like your product, or they don't like your price. They might love me and love my product, but when I hit them with that rate, oh yeah, I'll get back to you on that. So I oftentimes will use pricing as a barrier to basically not work with people that are a pain in the butt. Now, this has turned around and bit me before. I have gone to clients that they love me and they love my product, and when I hit them with the price, I thought it would make them flinch, and they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. Here's my credit card. You can go ahead and bill it right now. I'm like, dang it. Man. But you know what? They paid me handsomely to basically put up with their nonsense. So, at that point, that's great. But how often does the opposite happen, where you go and you charge too little and then they end up being just a big pain in the neck? Like that oftentimes will happen more than what happened with me. And so I love it when that happens. But because I understand the reasons why people don't buy, sometimes I use that to my advantage. Maybe they might say, well, I'm looking for this particular set of things in the photography. And I'll say, well, unfortunately, I don't offer that. Like they'll say, we're looking for these big prints. And I'll say, I really don't do prints, even though I do. But like, I don't do prints. I do the digital files, and that's it. Bless you. So there's ways that you can basically block out people that you don't want to work with. But what I will tell you is in the beginning, don't be too picky. Because I've noticed, I've actually talked to a lot of photographers. I've had some that I've mentored that at the first whiff of any type of challenge with the client, they're like, I don't want to work with them. And then next week, I got this other client, but I don't want to work with them either. I'm like, dude, how are you going to make money if you keep, you're never going to find that ideal client that, is just like perfect and they have no qualms. Everything is super simple. Like every sales interaction can be difficult. So don't be afraid of it. Don't price yourself out of every job. For me, that would happen once in a blue moon. Right? I want everybody's money. Everybody's money looks great to me, right? So I'm not turning people away. If they're difficult, let me tell you, some of my best customers, my best clients that I've ever had in my entire life were customers that when I first met them were very difficult. And here's the funny thing, right? They end up being like stark raving lunatics after the whole thing is done because I know they're difficult, right? And maybe you've worked with clients before like this where right out of the gates, they're very difficult people. They're going to be hard to please. But if you go out of your way to make them happy and to please them, guess what? everybody else knows them to be a pain in the butt. They're hard to please. But when they go and they say, man, I work with this guy, Miguel, he was awesome. He was this, he was that, and they're just going on and on. Guess what? People are going to be like, dang, this dude Miguel must have been good because holy cow, we know you're a pain in the butt. So if you hooked him up, you know, or if he hooked you up, then me, I'm easy. I'll have a great time with him, you know? So, so I want you guys to change your mindset when it comes to dealing with difficult customers and difficult clients. Make them into like your guinea pig, right? Because what's the worst that's going to happen? You go through a sales interaction with them. It doesn't turn out great. It's, you know, feather in your cap. It's practice for you. So, yes.
The question I have for you is, how active are you about challenging your own assumptions about who your market is? I mean, you said, well, you know, fathers aren't interested in women who are pregnant.
Yes.
Well, maybe they are.
Maybe they are. You're right.
So how, I mean, do you challenge, how do you, I mean, you might have things going great.
Right.
And then you go, oh, okay, I got this.
Yeah. So the question was, how active am I in challenging my perceptions about who my customers are, where they are, just all of the demographics? And I will tell you, I'm in a constant state of just reevaluating, right? I'm looking at things and I'm saying, maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe there is some type of value in marketing to men who are looking for maternity photos, as an example. Maybe there's a ripe market for that, and I'm just overlooking it because I'm thinking I should be marketing just to women. So just as an example. So I'm always looking at this, and I'm always really trying to see what other angles can I look at this situation, because I could be totally wrong. Or maybe I was right a month ago, but all of a sudden something happened and, you know, things changed. So again, what's right today might be wrong tomorrow, and then right the following day, you know, and then it changes completely a week later. So you have to stay on top of things. This is why you see photographers that are, you know, photographers from like the 70s and 80s, that they have portrait studios, and when you see their studio, their photos still look like they were from the 70s and 80s, and they're wondering why nobody is booking them, right? Because they didn't look to say, well, this is what worked in that time, but we're in 2017, and images need to be fresher, they need to be different. And, you know, they're thinking everything is wrong with everyone else, right? It's y'all's taste is really bad. This is a good photo. And it's like a sepia photo with a really harsh vignette. That's beauty right there. Hey, it was probably great back in the day, but today people probably don't want to buy that. So you always have to reevaluate. You always have to look and see that things are going the way that you think they're going. Those trends are going in that way. And you got to be ahead of that. Sometimes you need to know ahead of where those trends are going. So if you know, for example, that there's a movement afoot where more men are looking to have their spouses photographed carrying their baby, then maybe you market ahead of that, right? Before it ever turns into a big thing, because once again, you establish yourself as that subject matter expert because you got there early, right? So very good question. I love that. Any other questions at this point? All right, let's carry on because I got a lot to cover. So understand, what is your value proposition? This is the number one thing that I see that just trips up photographers, because they can't articulate what it is that they're giving to the client. You know, they're like, well, you know, it's this artsy thing and photos and butterflies in your stomach, you know. So you have to understand, what products do you offer, right? Are you offering prints? Are you offering digital? If you're offering these products, how does that break up? Are you only offering 8x10s? Are you offering big prints, small prints, wallet size prints? Are you offering prints on paper, wood, you know, aluminum? Like, what are you offering to your clients? You have to understand what products it is that you offer so that you can figure out how you can establish value for what you offer. Does that make sense? All right, so the next thing you have to think about is, are these products exciting and desirable, right? Because we talk about things and we'll say, okay, I want to offer these particular products. And again, I've had these photographers that open up this like booklet. They're like, oh, you want to know my prices? Here's this encyclopedia. It tells you all of my prices. It's like, dang, that's a lot of stuff, right? It's not exciting, because if I have to sit there and flip through stuff and I don't know what it is, that's not going to get me excited to actually want to break out my wallet and say, here's my money, take it, right? So you have to understand what makes these products exciting and desirable, and that way when you go to sell the product, you can hit them over the head with like, this is why this is awesome. These prints last forever. It's, you know, very exclusive type of thing that we're printing process, whatever. There's a million different ways to make it exciting and desirable, and it's all going to depend on what you're doing. But you have to figure that out so that you can establish that value to the client. The next thing is the value clearly defined or explained? So you could have a really awesome product, a really awesome service that you're offering, but again, if you can't identify or define what that value is to the customer, you're going to have a very hard time closing the sale, because they're going to walk away saying, I really don't know what I'm paying for. How many times have you heard, like, from people that you tell them you're a photographer, like, you get paid for that? Because isn't everybody a photographer? Like, isn't that like a struggling, like a dying industry? And the reason is that people can't define what value they bring to the table compared to me with a cell phone. Because I'm taking a photo just like you might be as a professional or an aspiring professional. But the value that you bring to the table as a professional is very different than the value I bring when I go to a wedding with a cell phone and I'm standing up over everybody, you know, messing up your shot. Like, it's a different value. So you have to understand, and you have to be able to clearly define what that difference is. And when people understand it, they're more likely to make a sale. You're more likely to get their money. So I want to show you this in a graphical form, because if you're like me, I need to see graphs. Graphs make me feel like I'm a professor, so I had to throw one in the presentation. But in this graph, you'll see price and value. And this is the same no matter if it's photography, if it's cars, if it's food. If the price exceeds the value of what that product or service is giving you, there's no sale, right? And you'll hear people say it's not worth it because the price is so high. You know, I went to Hawaii for the very first time, and I didn't realize like food is very expensive in Hawaii. I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken because I love chicken, and it was $15 for 3 pieces and a biscuit. Now, for me, I'm used to paying like $6, $7 in New Jersey for 3 pieces and a biscuit, right? So the price so far exceeded that value that I literally was standing in line. I got to the counter because I didn't see what I wanted on the menu. When the guy said it was $15, I'm like, thank you, I'm out. Because if I'm gonna spend $15 on 3 tenders and a biscuit, I'm gonna go find some steak or like something where this happens, where the value far exceeds the price. This is why places like, I don't know if they have Golden Corral in New York, but like that's why places like this, upstate New York, where these buffet places do so well, because you can walk in there and you spend 20 bucks, but you can eat as much as you want, right? So the value far exceeds the price. So you say, well, that's an easy sale. Sign me up for that. I'll sign up for that $20 buffet, and guess what? They're gonna have to kick me out. Be like, Sadi, you ate too much. You go now, right? So when the value exceeds the price, this other thing happens, right? Shut up and take my money. Because if you go to them and you tell them, here's what it is that I offer. I offer this, 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 and this, and guess what? You get all of that, and it's only for this price, right? It's almost like the ShamWow guy. You know, he's like, yeah, you could do all these different things. You're watching the commercial, and you're like, how much is it? How much is it? And then he's like, it's this much, but wait, there's more. Not only will you get this one, which I've already exceeded the value, the one is already a great value, but guess what? If you order today in the next 10 minutes, we'll throw in a second one. And you're like, mind blown. Where's my credit card? Where's my phone, right? So as soon as your value proposition goes above and beyond what that customer is willing to pay for it, you've got a sale. So in the example I was telling you guys with this hospice organization, when I proposed to them that, hey, this is what my pricing is going to be to do each of these locations, this is what I'm giving you for that amount of money, and the value is that you don't have to send employees from 4 different states to come to my place in New Jersey. I'm going to come to each of these individual offices. I'm going to be dressed professionally. I'm going to have everything that I need. We're going to take the photographs throughout the course of 4 hours at the offices. You know, we're going to have this whole thing coordinated, and you're going to get all of the images back within 1 to 2 weeks, completely retouched, so that you can upload it to the website. The value for them was so above and beyond that when I hit them with that flat rate, they're like, whatever, sign me up, right? Because now it's easy. I don't have to send people to you. I don't have to do all this scheduling. You're going to come and take care of everything. You're going to deliver it in a timely fashion. and you're going to do it at a great price, dude, sign me up. It's done, right? Shut up, take my money. So this is how that happens. Your value proposition has to exceed the pricing that you're asking from your clients. And if you find that when you're trying to sell a client and they say, no, I'm not interested, or whatever the case might be, chances are you have not established the value for them to make that decision. They still don't understand what it is that you're trying to propose to them. So if they don't understand what they're paying for, they're not going to buy it. I think Middle had a question?
Yeah, two-part question.
Yes.
How many hospice locations did you do?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you budget that out per location? Or did you say, okay, I'm doing, 10?
Yeah,
So then you don't want to lose if two locations get
right. Very true. So it was 23 hospice locations that I work with. As far as pricing it, what I did was I said, okay, if these people were, how would I price this if this was in my backyard and it was the average number? Because they gave me an average. They said our lowest location had about between 6 and 8. Our biggest locations have between like 25 and 30, but not all of those people, they may not need photos. So, so I said, okay, so I'll take the average low and the average high. And I say, if I was doing this in my backyard, I would charge X amount of dollars. If I was doing this and I didn't even budget for an Ithaca trip, but I was thinking like an hour and a half away, what would I budget for that? Which the majority of them were actually within like 90 minutes of my address. So I budgeted that amount. And then what I tried to do was to try to come up with a comfortable average between the two so that when they would look at it, they would say, well, for some locations, we're getting a great value based on what you're selling. And for some locations, we're paying a little bit more. But because we have so many more locations that have more employees than less employees, that's how they made their decision. So, and what was funny was I almost felt like when I gave them my rate and how easy they were like, okay, because I established the value, I was like, dang, I should have hit them for more, you know? And that's going to happen to you as well. But don't be that person who's like, oh, well, let me bump it up $500, right? So, yeah, you wanna watch out for that. So I basically averaged everything out, and I looked at the overall opportunity, and I said, okay, so these 23 locations are going to net me this much money, and would I be okay if, let's say, half of those people decided, yeah, well, these half of these locations we're not going to do? I still would have gladly done the job. So everything that I got over and above, like the 10 or 11. Was just icing on the cake. So, and that's kind of decisions that you have to make as you go along.
Do you have a team of people who travel with assistant to assistants, makeup, something like that?
So
Do you take care of the talent pool?
in this scenario, I took care of it on my own. However, there are some jobs where I'll have to budget having an assistant. There's actually, I've had some clients that are, somebody was asking earlier about having these like problem clients. I've had some clients that are very high maintenance, and if I would show up by myself for the rates that I charge them, they would be like, we're getting ripped off. And they're still getting the same image, they're still getting the same final product, but they want the dog and pony show, right? So I give them a dog and pony show. I'll hire an assistant, I'll hire a digital tech, I'll hire a guy who all he does is just basically walk with a light meter and just make the flash go off. I'll roll in with like 5 Pelican cases and a bunch of junk that I'm not even going to use, but I just bring it because they want that. They want to be able to go and show people like, yeah, I got Miguel Quiles to come and do this job, and I feel really good about what I'm paying him. I mean, look at all this crap he brought, right? So you have some clients that are like that where you have to do this whole just dog and pony show, but the majority of the people, I just say I'm going by myself. I'll bring everything, and whatever it takes to get the job done, I'm going to try to budget for that. So if I have to hire somebody, that's also included in that final price. Whatever the day rates are, whatever the gear rentals might be, whatever the case might be. As time has gone on, I basically purchased all the stuff that I would have rented. So I rarely ever rent anything. But back in the day, when I used to have a smaller supply of equipment, I would come here to Adorama. I'd bring a rental, a little van, and I would just load up this van with a bunch of rental gear. And what was sad was a lot of it I wasn't even going to use. It was just literally for show. It hurts my heart to even have to do that. But I think you had a question?
So for the 23 locations,
Mm-hmm.
how long are you assuming each person's
Good question. So she was asking for the locations that I did, how did I budget time for each individual to photograph them? So I understand that there's some people that, out of a group of 20, let's say, that may like the process of having their photo taken. Maybe they take a lot of selfies and, they sit down for a minute and we knock out a photo. And there's other people that are like, I hate having my photo taken. I don't want my picture. I don't even know why I got to do this. I had the whole spectrum of people, some that loved it and some that were like, I hate your guts and I hate that I have to stand here and let you take my photo. So I would budget my time and I would tell them you have 4 hours for each location. Realistically, I can get those 20 people and get them done in less than an hour. However, I know some people are going to be late. Some people are going to come in with ketchup stains on their shirt or dress. Some people are going to want to do their makeup. Some people might need some extra grooming. Some people, as I'm photographing them, they may be really nervous and shy. And so I have to talk to them and kind of warm them up a little bit and make them basically completely forget about the fact that they're about to have their photo taken, just talking to them. So usually within 40 hours or 4 hours, I knew that I could photograph 20 people and have time to spare. And I think out of all the locations I did, I might have had like one where I actually went the full 4 hours. And part of that was because like 2 or 3 people were at home and they were like, oh, we didn't know we were supposed to get our portraits taken today and it's 45-minute drive. So of course I got to sit and wait after I finished everybody else for those people to, come in last minute so that I could take their photos. But I budgeted for that. A majority of the locations, 1.5 hours, 2 hours, I was out the door. We were done. The one with the 8 people, I came in less than an hour. I was in and out. Thank you. Have a good day. So, yes.
Call it live with them, or you just determine whichever
Oh, yeah. As far as picking the images? Yeah, that's a good question. So he was asking, basically, do I pick the images that go to the clients?
you should tell them.
Yes. So most of the time I'm shooting tethered when I'm doing these corporate gigs. However, they don't always see the images. At the end of the day, this might be very shocking for some of you, but I always, like if you see on my social media, all the images that you see, I really can't remember a time when an image that I posted was an image that my client picked. So we're going back to being a subject matter expert, right? Just like a doctor is a subject matter expert, you wouldn't imagine going to your doctor and when the doctor says, hey, I'm going to prescribe you this because I think this is what's going to help you. And you say, nah, doc, I don't think that's a good idea. I want this. He's going to be like, listen, man, I'm the doctor. He's not even going to tell you that. He's going to be like, listen, dum-dum, you're going to take this prescription. You're going to take it because I'm not giving you anything else, right? Because this is what I do. I'm a doctor, right? You guys are subject matter experts when it comes to your genre of photography. So they're hiring you, and the reason why they're paying you is for you to tell them this is what a good image is. Because guess what? They might have had, like say in my case, these individuals may not have had a professional photo taken since they were in elementary school or in high school. They don't know a good image if it, tripped over them. But I do, because that's all I do. That's my life. Like my life is taking portraits of people. So oftentimes they're very easy about that. They're like, you know what? I don't want to pick it because if I have to pick the image, I won't pick one because I don't think I look good in any photo. But what's funny is that if your clients enjoy the experience of this sales experience, this photography experience, what I tend to find is that when I tell them, hey, this is the best image of you from the session, check it out, they're like, wow, I can't believe it. I've never looked this good. This is so amazing. I love it. Thank you so much. 99% of the time when I give them that image that I picked, that's what ends up happening. And it's not that I'm like this amazing photographer or anything like that. This holds true even at, let's say, a restaurant. Let me give you an example. So let's say you go to a restaurant after you're done right now, and you're standing, it's a sit-down restaurant, you walk up to the counter, and the person who is at the counter, the host or the hostess, they're sitting there on their cell phone, and they're just playing and texting, and you're standing like, literally, you could touch them, and they're just standing there, they're ignoring you, and 5 minutes goes by, and you're just curious, like, how long is this gonna go at this point, right? And they're just playing, and they're like, yeah, what's up? You're like, I would like a table, like I'd like to eat. Yeah, sure. And they just walk away. And you're just standing there like, And then they turn around, right? Follow me. And you're like, what the heck? So you go, you follow them, you get the table, you sit down. 10 minutes passes by, your waiter finally shows up to the table. They're like, what do you want? You're like, what the heck? I've just been waiting all this time. I waited 10 minutes for you to get here and you're gonna greet me like that? This is what I want, right? I want this, this, and this, because I've already had plenty of time to look at the menu. Then all of a sudden your food comes, and maybe your food is perfect. Maybe you ordered, chicken tenders and biscuits like I did, and those chicken tenders come, and they are the most epic chicken tenders and biscuit that you've ever seen or laid eyes on. Do you really think after you've had a terrible experience up to that point that that's not going to impact your taste of that food? It does to me every time. I've been with friends where it never fails. If you ever, don't ever go and eat with me because I get terrible service every time I go out to eat. It never fails. And it never fails that when the food comes and I'll taste it, I'm like, no, man, it's not even hot. And people are like, dude, that looks perfect. No, it's not perfect. Because why? Because I had to sit there and wait while somebody was playing, on their phone for 5 minutes. I had to wait 10 minutes for the waiter to come and give me this food. It needed to basically be mind-blowing, but for it to be just good enough is not good enough. But then the opposite, the inverse is also true. If you come in and they greet you and they have a smile on their face, they're like, oh man, this dinner is going to be great, follow me. They get you a perfect table, it's nice and it's clean, the place smells right. Your waiter immediately comes to the table with a glass of water, because chances are you're thirsty. They bring a basket of bread, and you're like, oh, this is great, Let me go ahead and take your order. And they take the order, and you're sitting there waiting, and you're not even done with the bread, and all of a sudden your meal's at the table. You're like, damn, this service is over and above, Guess what? You're probably going to like that food because you've enjoyed the experience, and that person's probably going to get a pretty good tip, right? Compared to that first example where the only tip that they're going to get from me is a nice little note that says, do better next time, right? So this is where I'm saying that it's very much the same when it comes to your photography. You have to control that experience, and you have to make sure they're having a great experience, and you will find that if they enjoyed working with you and they enjoyed the process of creating these images, then when you deliver that file, guess what's going to happen? Oh, that's so amazing. I've never had a photo like this before. Oh, I need to go and, I've got a son or daughter or spouse or girlfriend, boyfriend. They're getting married. I need to get them to book with you. And this happens to me all the time. And the only reason that it happens is because they enjoy the experience. Because that experience has been kind of custom tailored to make it to where when they get that final image, they're like, I love it. And it's not that they love the image, it's that they love me. They loved working with me. It was just like an extension of them loving me. Of course, if I give you the image that I slaved over, right, they're going to love that photo. So very good question. I'm glad that you asked that because I might not have covered that. Let's talk about this sales process. So this is a very generic process, and I would tell you that, again, based on what it is that you offer, who your clients are, where they're located, this process could vary. So it's very hard to talk about selling in photography because there's so many different things, but generally speaking, this is the sales process that I put my clients through in order to close sales. So the very first thing is always prospecting, right? We talked about where do we find our clients, where are they located, who are they? So I do that initial prospecting. The next step is I'm going to contact them. And we're going to talk about active versus passive marketing in a few moments, but just to make it simple, we'll just say I contact them in some way, shape, or form. The next thing we do is, as we're talking, I identify their needs. They say, we are looking for example, this hospice. We're looking for headshots for all these different locations. There's X amount of people, and I say, great. So after I get all of the fact-finding done of what it is that they need, I'll turn around and I'll say, okay, here's my offer. I'm going to charge you X amount of dollars for each location. You're going to get X amount of photos. I bring all my stuff, so on and so forth. Then I'm going to handle any objections if there are any. If they come back and they say, well, Miguel, what happens if this? What happens if that? What if they don't like the images? What if we need to do a reshoot? Whatever objections or questions it is that they might have, we handle that. And then once that's all done, guess what? You close the deal. You're done. You make the sale. And now it's up to you to provide a really awesome experience to that customer so that when you give them that image, that they love it and they're happy with however much it is that they end up paying you for that job. So any questions at this point about the sales process? Because it's kind of simplistic, but honestly, it could be that easy. Yes.
So, being fairly inexperienced and a novice,
Mhm.
I'm just shooting pictures at this point, just to enjoy the process,
Sure.
learn, see what I see, and I've recently taken some photos that I think are somewhat interestingly commercial.
Right.
So, as opposed to what you do, which is you've got a lane, you know your
Mhm.
lane, you know how to
Yes.
work through that lane, right? So I'm just producing photos at this point that some I think are super cool and really interesting.
Right.
If I, let's say, want, is this even possible, realistic in your world, would you go to a gallery, let's say, with these photos? Or
Mhm.
what would be sort of, how do you navigate that?
So let me ask you this. So she was asking about if you're basically getting started, you know, maybe you're trying to figure out, like for me, I do headshots and portraits. That's my lane. That's my sandbox. That's where I play. Many of you may not even know what sandbox you want to be in, right? You may not know if you want to be a portrait person. And even within the world of portraits, there's a lot of like subcategories. There's, you know, photographing babies. That's its own thing. Like I've tried it, not for me, right? Because I tried talking to babies. I'm like, no, stop that. And they don't listen, right? Doesn't work. Doing maternity was something I tried to do it, and I had a hard time. I had a very hard time. I could see myself when my wife is pregnant, thinking my wife is beautiful, but it's very hard for me to look at someone else's wife when they're pregnant and be like, yeah, they're beautiful. So it's hard for me to photograph them when there's a disconnect. That was just me personally. Maybe it might be different for you, which is totally okay. So the question is, like, basically, how do you explore, I guess, the different categories that you might find yourself in? How do you know how to find your lane?
Well, how can you sell, like, how would I go about selling these photos that
Yes.
I have to a gallery or to I don't know, what
So-
are the other options?
In the very beginning, I'm going to tell you that it's very important to figure out what you want your sandbox to be, right? Because this kind of goes to how to find who your customer is and all the demographics. If you do everything, and I see a lot of photographers that are like jack of all trades, they do portraits, they do fine art, they do weddings, they do events, they do all this different stuff. And they don't specialize in anything specifically. And so what I would say is that it's really important in the very beginning to figure out what is your specialty. What is it that you want to offer as your product to the world? You know, if you look at a store like Adorama, for example, they figured out before they opened this place up, what do we want to sell in this store? Do we want to sell cakes? You know, do we want to sell big screen televisions? Do we want to sell hairspray? No, they figured out we want to sell, you know, pro audio and video equipment and the things that are related to that. So it's important to figure out basically what it is that you're trying to do so that you can master that. And then you can figure out, okay, so let's just say shooting weddings is what you want to do. Great, that's what you love. That's where you want to compete, is in the world of weddings. So now you know, okay, these are the types of people that I have to go after. This is where I can find them. You can get very specific about what you offer. If you're trying to be a jack of all trades, I would tell you, do it all for fun. You know, in the very beginning, like for me, I did it as a hobby before I started doing it professionally. I photographed babies, I photographed weddings, I photographed events, I did boudoir, I did commercial stuff. And I did some things that I thought the images were really great. And I'm like, man, I could really make a living doing this like boudoir thing. And then I'm like, well, yeah, it's not really my cup of tea, you know? So you have to first figure out what you like to do and what you want to do. And then you can figure out, okay, can I go to a gallery? Can I go to, maybe a gallery isn't the way to go. Maybe they don't pay. Because most of the time, you end up having to pay to open up that gallery. So maybe opening up the gallery doesn't lead you to any sales. Maybe like one of these little events that they do on the weekends, like these art fairs and stuff like that. Maybe that might be better. Or maybe a wedding conference where they have these big wedding shows and then people can have booths set up and pictures behind them and all that. Maybe that's where you go. Maybe you use a service like Wedding Wire or something like that to find clients. But if you basically don't know what you want to do or what sandbox you want to play in, you're going to waste a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort, because each type of photography has its own set of challenges. So the things that I need to do to photograph corporate headshots and to be competent and be very good at that and to give a good experience for those types of customers is not the same as doing family portraits or photographing events or whatever the case might be. It's like a totally different thing. So if you're doing everything right now and maybe you might be producing a certain type of work that you think is really good that you could start charging for, really at the end of the day you need to figure out, is that even something you like to do? Because if you don't like doing it, like I didn't like photographing babies starting out, I don't care what you pay me. I mean, I've had people that have walked up to me and they're like, oh, I love your portraits. I would love for you to photograph my baby or my kids. And I'm like, yeah, I know some people. That's not my thing. So,
Maybe I could just sort of rephrase it.
Yeah.
And I'm certain that I'm not articulating.
it might be that I don't understand it,
Yeah, no,
but that's okay too.
Is there ever a scenario where you have your product first,
Right.
and then try to sell the photograph, as opposed
Gotcha.
to what you do, which is they hire you for your service,
Yes.
and then you produce it.
Yes. So basically, you come up with the product first and then you sell it,
Right.
as opposed to trying to figure out what your product is. And so, yes and no. I mean, I figure out first what genre it is that I like to shoot, and then I figure out and I do my research to say this is what people who do that, this is what they offer, and then I figure out this is what I could offer that's a little bit different. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what we all offer is going to be different because we're all different, right? The experience that somebody has photographing or being photographed by me is going to be different than it is being photographed by you. It could be much better. You know, maybe you have this bubbly personality. I'm a born introvert. So for me, it hurts sometimes to try to go through this sales process with people because in my world, like I love being at home and reading books and playing video games and just hanging out. For me to have to like put on this character that just loves people and loves taking photographs, it's tiring, you know? Maybe for you, it's just like a natural thing. So yeah, I mean, you know, there's not like a set thing, but what I would tell you is that you first have to understand the type of clients you want to go after. Then you could create the types of products, and maybe you might think that the consumer side of things is where those products would live best. But it could turn out that maybe you get a corporate client one day, and they're like, man, you could be killing it on the corporate side doing all these different projects. And then you're like, well, forget the consumer stuff. Like, I'm going after the corporate clients. That's okay too. You know, I've done that before. I've gone out and I think I'm going to be going a certain way to go somewhere, and then my GPS reroutes me. And I'm like, oh, wow, I can get that way going this way too? That's totally okay. But at the end of the day, once you actually set out to go after these customers, you have to have your products in order. You have to understand what your value proposition is. If you don't understand what these things are, you're probably going to be dead in the water. So that's the most important thing. Have everything ready to go before you hit the market. Don't find the market and then make it up, because it's very hard. Unless you're like a professional BSer. I've met a few of you out there, in which case maybe you could BS it a little bit and you close some sales. But long-term success, you're gonna need to have everything, all your ducks in a row, and then hit the market and sell whatever product it is you have. Very good question. I like that. So let's carry on. ABC. I told you guys, you have to know your ABCs. Always be closing. So this means that you are constantly moving towards closing with every interaction that you have with that potential client. What I see a lot of creatives do is because they're so scared of selling, they wait until the very end to try to close a sale. Like the very end. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes the client is like, man, I'm ready. Like, just tell me that, just ask me, do I want to buy it? And I'll go ahead and I'll say, yes, I'll buy it right now. But because a lot of creatives are so nervous about asking for the sale, they'll just keep talking and talking. We're going to do this, and it's going to be fun, and there's going to be flowers and unicorns. And they're like, yep, okay, I like all that. Yep. And they're just waiting, like, would you like to sign? Would you like to buy? Would you like to book today? They're just waiting for that moment. So from the very beginning, every interaction that I have, I'm trying to close that sale from the very beginning. And it doesn't have to be like from step one, hey, how are you? Hey, I'm doing great. Would you like to go ahead and buy today? Like, I'm not doing that. I'm doing these little micro closes all throughout. So when they reach out to me and I say, hey, would you like to set up a call either tomorrow or Friday for me to talk about the different things that I offer, right? It's a micro close. When I get on that phone call and I start talking to them and fact finding, and I say, okay, so if I understand correctly, these are the things that you're looking for. If I'm able to go ahead and deliver all of that stuff within that time frame, would you like to go ahead and book for next week? Sure, right? Micro close. You have to constantly, all throughout, make creative ways to be able to get confirmation from your client that they want to continue on that sales process. And if you wait until the end of the sales process to ask for their business, you might be stabbing yourself in the foot. So constantly, always, that's why they say always be closing. You always need to be asking for little micro closes throughout the process. And I kind of mentioned this, don't wait until the end to close. And you identify the customer's wants and needs, and you try these micro closes or these soft closes. And I want to give you an example. This is one that I find because I do headshots. This happens often. Person will say, I'd like to get some new headshots for LinkedIn. And I could say something like, if I could take professional images of you at an agreeable price, would you be interested in booking with me today? Right? And this actually covers the 3 reasons that people do or don't buy, right? It's all in that same little phrase, because I'm asking them, if I could take some professional images, I'm addressing whether or not the product is going to be good or not, right? So if I could take if I can deliver a good product to you, and then I say at an agreeable price, right? So I'm addressing the fact if my pricing is good and my product is good, would you like to book with me today? Not with Joe Blow down the street, not with somebody else. Would you like to book with me today? And I'm giving them this little soft close, and they'll say, well, yeah, I mean, if you're offering the things that I need at the price that I like and, you know, I like you, then yeah, I'll book today. Or they might say, well, I'm not quite sure. And then you say, okay, well, then again, you go into the fact finding. Well, what do you need? Like, what is it that you need to know? Oh, well, maybe they're not sold on you, your product, or your price. Maybe they don't believe that you can deliver the product that they're looking to have delivered. So then that's when you go back and you start talking to them and you say, okay, let me clear up those questions. Let me clear up those concerns. And then you go back to the close once more. All right, so we got that cleared up. You know, again, if we could come up with a good rate for this particular job, would you be interested in booking this today? Well, you know, I'm not quite sure. And now maybe it's the product. They got some question about that. So then you double back. And then you come back again and you hit them again. Soft closes over and over and over again. And that's going to help you because what I see tends to happen a lot is because people are afraid of selling and they're afraid of asking for the close. They might be wasting their time talking to somebody who has no capacity to be able to do business with you. Maybe they're not ready. You know, maybe they're talking to you about wedding photography and they're not getting married for 2 years. You know? Like, so it's very important that you do these fact-finding things and you continually try to close because they could be sitting here telling you, and imagine, this has happened to me before where I'm talking to them, yeah, you know, we got this event, and it's going to be awesome. We're going to have these cocktails, and we're going to have all these people, and it's going to be here and there and all this stuff. I'm like, wow, that's great. That's great. You know, I could offer you this. We could do this. This will be my rate. So like, oh, that's great. That's great. You know, and then we're going to do this. And they keep going on and on about what they're going to do. And then you're like, so when would you like to book this? Oh, I mean, this isn't for right now. This is for like, you know, I'm getting married next year or 2 years from now. Has that ever happened to you guys before where you start going down the road to sell something and they're like, no, we're not going to be ready for a long time. And you're like, get out of my face. You know, I can't believe I just wasted all this time. You can't do that. But in your mind, you're like wanting to. Exactly. And that's where, like, again, this is where the closings come. And you say, well, you know, when are you looking to have this done? Oh, well, I'm looking to set this up for next month. Well, great. You know, if I happen to have the availability and I could get you the product and the price that you're looking for, would you be interested in booking that today? Because the thing is, I get booked all the time. Chances are, if the date's available today, it may not be tomorrow. So if we can work out all the details, would you be interested in booking today? Yeah, absolutely. Great. And you kind of go from there. So you have to continually be going and chasing after this soft close. And it could be that simple. It could literally just be that simple. Just close them on the little things, and then at the very end, you hit them over the head with like, here it is. Let's wrap this up. So I think somebody had a question. I saw a hand start to pop up. Yes. Uh-huh. hold on, let me get up. You said identifying.
customers' needs and
Yes. Uh huh.
like that's kind of a problem for me sometimes, and I was just wondering if you have any techniques or anything that helps you identify.
Yes. So she was asking for ways to be able to identify your customers' wants and needs. And so for me, what's really helped is building rapport with my clients. Because what I found is that when I don't build rapport with my clients, they may not be so upfront and honest to tell me what their wants and needs are, because they may not be comfortable with me, right? Because again, one of the reasons why people don't do business with you is they don't like you or they don't understand you. So we're creatures that if we don't like the person or understand them, chances are we're going to be really difficult about telling them what our wants and needs are. So building rapport with them has always helped to basically open the floodgates for them to be comfortable to tell me, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I want. Because oftentimes, maybe they don't know what they want, right? Maybe they're like, I'm not really too sure, and they're really shy about the fact that they don't know how to have that conversation with you because they don't know what they want. So they're like, yeah, I'm not really too sure. So very first thing, you have to establish rapport with that customer so that they understand that, look, just like I told you guys in the beginning, right? I said, this is a judgment-free zone. We're all family here. I want your questions because I'm trying to encourage you guys to ask those questions, right? I have to be able to establish that rapport with you guys that if you ask a question that I'm not going to be like, stupid question, sit down, right? Because then nobody else is going to get up, right? So I have to be encouraging. I have to say, yeah, absolutely, great question, because I want to fish out more questions from the group. So for me, what's worked really well is just establishing that rapport with them and then really just asking a lot of questions, letting them talk, listening to what they say, and then making statements and comments that make them understand that I understand what they need. Because what happens often is people will say, so what are you looking for? And they'll say, well, I'm looking for this, this, and this. And they're just, okay, all right. So this is how much that would be. And they're like, could you repeat back? Like, that's why when you go to a drive-through, right, they repeat back your order if they're good. And if they didn't, sometimes you're like, hey, could you repeat that order back to me just to make sure that, you got my order correct? So for me, that's what happens. I'll ask them questions. What are you looking for? What are your needs? And then when they tell me in a roundabout way or in a direct way, this is what I want, I repeat it back to them. So this is what you're looking for. So you're looking to have, for example, that one client, you're looking to have 8 to 30 executives photographed at 23 different locations throughout 4 different states. And you're looking for me to be able to go to that location and to photograph these individuals. Just want to make sure we understand it. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Great. Perfect. And then you could go ahead and you could custom tailor that offering to be able to close that deal. If they tell you what they're looking for and you don't basically come back to them and tell them what it is that their wants and needs are, then you're going to have a hard time closing a sale. So I think you had a follow-up to that? Uh-huh.
Is that scenario with a customer that you already reached out to, or is it somebody that
Yeah.
basically I'm asking is if initially you're reaching out to someone you don't know who potentially want them as a customer.
Right.
So how do you approach that and ask them those questions? What if they don't give you a chance to? You have to be that one particular option initially, and ask them to be a client for you.
So let me see if I understand. So if you have a client, you've basically you're in the prospecting phase, you're talking to them, you're trying to establish in that prospecting phase. Maybe it's like when I go to these networking events, where obviously I would like to take everybody's money, but not everybody necessarily needs what I do. So that's where having that conversation with them and talking to them, hey, what do you do? And it's really funny because I'll talk to these people and they're like, oh yeah, so I'm an IT manager, I do this, I do that, or I run a business. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And I'm just kind of making mental notes of like, okay, so they said this one thing. So when it's my turn to talk, I'm going to establish my value of what I do. And then I'm going to hit them directly with what their wants and their needs are. They may not be telling me they have a want or a need for my photography, but they might say, well, I am looking to find these certain types of customers, and I'm trying to establish this certain brand online. And I go ahead and I say, oh, well, do you have photographs of yourself on your website or of your team? Oh no, we don't. You know, we just have these little gray. You know, when you go on LinkedIn and you first sign up for the account, you got the little silhouette, the gray person. You know, and I'm like, hey, you know, people don't like doing business with people that they can't see. Like, you're way more likely, 300% more likely to close business online if you have a professional image of yourself. That if somebody sees you, they're like, wow, that person knows, like, they look like they know what they're doing, right? If they don't have an image, then you're not really too sure. So when it comes to that, you have to just, that's where the conversation kind of comes in. And because people are so prone to want to talk about themselves, sometimes it's just one of those things where you have to let them fall into the sale on their own. So like,
So it's basically someone that you're face to face with. It's
right.
not that
It could be on the phone.
email.
It could be via email as well. Yeah, it could totally be via email. The way that you do it by email, though, is going to be a little bit different. And we're going to talk about that because it's very different. That's where the active versus passive marketing comes in. I'm going to talk about that directly. It'll make more sense. So, yes.
After you've done a shoot, are you allowed to use some of those pictures for publicity for yourself?
Yes.
And if you're not, does that affect your price?
Yes. So he was asking if I do these photographs of my clients, am I allowed to use it? And if I'm not allowed to use it, do I charge them more? So all of my clients will sign a model release. So I am allowed, based on the model release, to be able to use those photographs. If I have a client that tells me, hey, we don't want you to use our photographs for whatever reason, then chances are I'll price myself out of working with them. Because there really shouldn't be any particular reason why somebody won't let you use their images unless they're somebody like super famous or they're on like the witness protection program or something. In which case I'll be sensitive to that. But if that's not your situation, I don't see why I couldn't put my photos that I did of you on my website. So yeah, oftentimes I just won't work with those clients or I'll price myself out of it. But if you have a model release signed, you should be able to go ahead and market those images to other people who might be interested in that.
Did your headshots for the location?
Yeah.
Individual can't design a release.
No. So what I do is I get the model release signed from the company and I get the permission from them. And then if they have a problem with it, you go to your company for that. They sign your life away. Just like for parents, you know, they sign their kids' lives away all the time. Yes?
When do you find it best to give before shoot or after, or is there?
Yeah, good question. So do you give the model releases before or after the shoot? I tend to do them afterwards. Because again, they've had a great experience with me. They've enjoyed the process of being photographed. Typically what I end up doing is I deliver files digitally. So I'll tell them at the end of the shoot, I need you to go ahead and look over this. I need to get your information. So your name, your phone number, your email, and that's on the model release. So I'll tell them, make sure that you read through the model release. At the very bottom, I need to get your contact info because that's how I send you the digital files once the shoot is done. So if you do it in the beginning, you haven't had a chance to work with them. They don't know if they like you or not. And so they're going to be reading it and they're like, no, you know, I don't want to sign this because people just don't like signing stuff. But at the end, they had a good time. They just want to get the heck out of there. Yeah, sure, go ahead, sign it. So any other questions? Yes, in the very back.
What percentage of your clients over the years have been from cold contact?
So what percentage of my clients have been from referrals or what?
Cold contact.
Cold contacts? I would say that the lion's share of the business that I've had when I started was all just like cold contacts, just people that I met, that I had conversations with. As I started to establish myself in my area and in my market as being the portrait guy or the headshot guy, then I started to get a lot of referrals. And even to this day, like I still get a lot of referrals from people that are like, hey, I saw the work that you did for this company. I'd like to book you. And you know, sometimes I end up having to turn it away if I'm busy or whatever. But in the beginning, it's going to be different than later. So, and you'll have seasons where like you get a ton of referrals, and you'll have some seasons where you got to hit the pavement, you got to hit the phones, you got to start making cold calls. So you can't be too good for either. You know what I mean? You got to be ready to do both. So, I think you had one?
How do you find an example of model release for the verbiage?
Yes. So finding your model releases, what I would tell you is there's a bunch of different ways. If you're a member of PPA, they actually have sample model releases that you can get a hold of. There's some model release applications for cell phones that basically you could go ahead and look through those. Or you could actually hire a lawyer and they could actually write one up for you. Oftentimes it's maybe a couple $100 for them to write it up. And you figure if it's $200 to pay a lawyer to write up a model release for you, and it's going to save you potentially thousands of dollars if you ever run into an issue, it's worth it. So hire an attorney. They'll write one up that's specific for your line of work and for your market. They know all the laws, and so it could be worth it to just do that. So let's carry on here because we've got 15 minutes. Cool. Let's talk about active versus passive marketing, which I think you were kind of asking about. So we're going to cover that. So there is a difference between cold calling and sending an email. And what I tend to see with a lot of creatives is that they'll say, I'll say, oh, what kind of marketing are you doing? And they're like, oh, man, I sent like 50 emails today. And it's like, okay, cool. So to me, sending emails is a very passive form of marketing because you're by yourself, you know, and when I say passive, I would say, could you do it in your underwear at home, right? Like if I could go ahead and send a do whatever type of marketing in my, you know, birthday suit, then that's kind of a passive form of marketing, right? It's very hands-off. You know, I send it and then I wait, right? And passive marketing to me is anything where you're doing something and then you're sitting back and waiting for something to come back. So, for example, the difference between networking at a show, going to like a actual show, versus posting a Google ad or posting a Facebook ad. One is passive, where you create the advertisement and then you put it out into the world and then you sit and you wait and you hope that somebody, you know, sees. Like, how many of you guys post on Facebook and will say like, you know, I'm offering, I don't know, photography sessions on sale, whatever the case might be. So that's a passive form of marketing. And a lot of people, that's as far as they go. They just put that out there and they hope their advertisement is compelling enough that somebody will want to book them for their services. When the reality of it is that we have to have a healthy mix of both active and passive marketing. So it can't just be that I send a client an email. It has to be followed up with maybe a cold call. Maybe if, let's say for corporate clients, I have my prospects, right? Because I did my prospecting in the sales cycle. I know the type of customers, companies that I want to deal with. Maybe I've gone to their website as kind of like a fact-finding situation. I'll go to their website and I see that they don't have photos of their executives, or maybe there's different photos that were taken over the course of many months. So I send them an email, and then I go visit them a day or two later. And I'll stop by their office. Hey, how are you doing? My name is Miguel. I sent you an email a few days ago. I just wanted to follow up with you. I was just in the area. I'm always just in the area. You know, and I just wanted to swing by and just kind of take a look and see if you guys would be interested in this. You know, and just kind of go ahead and start going for the close from there. So same thing, you know, visiting potential clients versus updating your website. I have a friend of mine who is notorious. Every time I ask him, what kind of marketing are you doing? Oh, I'm updating my website, you know, and I'm like, okay, cool. What are you doing to get people to your website? Oh, I'm just posting on Facebook. It's like one passive act after another passive act after another passive act. And it's like, dude, all you're doing is passive marketing, right? You keep posting stuff, whether it be advertisements, Facebook posts, Twitter posts, Instagram posts, and then you're sitting back and waiting for the cosmos to align for somebody to reach out to you. What happens if there's somebody that wants to work with you, but they're busy and they just don't get around to reaching out to you? Are you okay with losing that business? You know, you have to get out there. You have to pair up the passive with the active marketing. And that's where, for me, when I was telling you guys, I would do advertisements on Google Ads. I would do, when I was doing weddings, I was doing Wedding Wire and The Knot. I was doing advertisements through there. But I wouldn't just sit on that and say, well, that's it. I spent $500 for the year. That's going to be my whole marketing efforts for the rest of the year. No, I would go to wedding, bridal events. I would go to bridal stores that would sell accessories and dresses and go meet up with the store owners and say, hey, this is who I am. Because guess what? They have brides that are coming there to buy dresses, and maybe some of them don't have a photographer yet. So if I make good with the store owners or make good with the employees at these stores, I have the possibility that if they run into somebody, they're like, hey, there's this guy Miguel that stops by quite often, you know, and he seems to be pretty good. Here's his card, right? So it's still kind of passive, but it's coupled with something that's active, which is me either getting on the phone and making calls or physically going to these clients and seeing them face to face and just giving them my sales pitch and my value proposition. Does that kind of make sense? Or do you guys see yours sometimes where you do a lot of passive on top of passive? And so the active part is where it's really nerve-wracking, because the active part is where you have to be a subject matter expert. You have to be confident in what your value is, because now you're talking to them in person. It's one thing for you to mess up your value proposition digitally via email or through an advertisement. You know, that's one thing, because that's like, who cares? You don't even know. But if you are with the person in person, face to face, and you mess it up, and you sound like you don't know what you're talking about, and you don't know what you offer, that's where it comes back to hit you in the butt. So that's where we go back to being a subject matter expert. So let's talk briefly about branding. And this is something that you know, myself and my buddy Jeff Rojas in the back playing on his cell phone, we talk about branding quite often. And branding is very, very important, because let's say, for example, would you expect to go to Walmart and see like a Gucci bag on the shelf? Right? You wouldn't see that, right? Because their brand, Walmart's brand, is about being like the lowest price. So that's why they get stuff from other countries, you know, and they sell things really, really cheap. However, you know, if you go into maybe a Macy's or a Saks Fifth Avenue or whatever the case might be, you're not expecting to see budget brands, right? Even their budget brands are like way expensive. So branding is really important, because your branding has to coincide with a lot of different things in order to make your pricing and your products make sense. So you have to ask yourself, does your logo, your website, your marketing materials, does it match the target audience that you're trying to go after? So if you notice, or maybe you don't notice, my logo on the bottom right, that was a logo I created myself. And what I ended up doing was I looked at a lot of luxury brands, and I tried to figure out, and I wrote down like descriptions of these brands and how they design their logos. And I said, okay, so a lot of these companies' logos that are luxury brands, they have very simple icons for their logo. The font is very easy to read. It's very sleek, very clean. They use simple colors, but they have logos that could be any color, right? You could have an Apple logo in white, black, orange, red, whatever, because the employees, they could wear different color shirts and the logo still works. So I wanted that. I wrote down all these different elements, and then I said, okay, I want the brand to basically speak to all of these different things. And so I also wanted it to be personal. So the angel wings come from the fact that my middle name is Angel. So I used angel wings as my icon. And this was something I created years ago, and I still use it to this day, because those are the types of customers I want to go after. I want to go after the discerning client, the one that will pay good money to have photos done. And I want to deliver a product that is high-end and exclusive for those people. I'm not trying to market to the, you know, $20 package photographer, you know, or customer that is looking to have all these different things for $9 or $10. That's not for me. If that is you, that's totally fine. There's a world out there, a market out there for people that are offering photography services at a lower price. And there you're just having to turn over a lot of volume. So you have to have your process in place so where you can work with as many people as possible to make your time and your efforts worthwhile. So I'll give you guys an example when it comes to branding. If you guys had kids, and let's say I was a baby photographer and my brand is Baby Photos for You, and that was my logo, would you guys hire me to photograph your babies? Probably, yeah, exactly. They might get kidnapped, right? They might get sold off in some other country. So branding is important, right? Because if this was my brand and I didn't know any better, and I'm like, yeah, man, because I grew up in New York and that's how we draw, you know, that's how we write our stuff, right? Baby Photos for You. Maybe that works in, you know, a borough of New York that I lived in, but for a business, for a brand, that might not work, right? And so your branding has to coincide, your logos, your materials, all this stuff has to be cohesive. If I'm trying to go after a certain segment of the market, maybe that will work, but it's not going to work if I don't have those things in mind. So the other thing, does your work coincide with your brand? So if you're trying to develop this like high-end brand or mid-market brand, does your work reflect that value brand or that mid-market brand or that high-end polished look? You know, are you creating work that somebody who works really hard for their money, that they would actually want to pay tens of thousands of dollars for one photo? You know, and so that's where those things like selling at galleries, selling at art shows. You know, there was a picture of like a potato or something that sold for like so many millions of dollars. It was like ridiculous, but you know, that they've basically created a brand where like you're so awesome you could take a photo of a potato and sell it for $1 million. You know, that I think we all aspire to that at some human level. But so that's something that's really important. Now I wanted to share this. This was something that I saw from Tony Robbins, and when I saw it, I was like, holy cow, this is so true. Selling and being in business and being just successful in general is all about momentum. And a lot of people don't understand the importance of momentum. They don't understand how to build momentum. And so he kind of describes it with this little chart. And I'm going to describe this to you. How many of you guys would agree that as human beings that we have unlimited potential? Raise your hand. Right? We have unlimited potential. We could do, and our parents, my mom told me I could do whatever I wanted. Right? And then you probably heard that from your parents and your siblings. We have unlimited potential. Let's say a plant, as an example. How much does a plant grow? As much as it can, right? It grows as high as it can. It doesn't say, no, I'm tall enough, right? It just keeps going. Weeds, like I got to pull them on the weekends, and I know they have limitless potential because they just keep going if I don't pull them. So we all have this potential, but if we take this potential and let's say we take little action based on the potential that we have, then we get little results, right? Little action, little results. Or maybe you take a lot of action, but you're doing it the wrong way. Maybe you're going out there and you haven't identified your market, you haven't identified your product, and you put a lot of action. You spend 100 hours a week going out, hitting the streets, sending emails, putting marketing materials out, but you got the baby photos for you logo, you know, and branding that just doesn't suit the type of client that you're trying to go after. You can put a lot of action, but you can still get really poor results. And if you get poor results, what does that do to your attitude and your belief? Right? It impacts that. You go and you say, well, you know, I tried, I put in all these hours, I did all this stuff, and it didn't work for me. And then what happens? If you have little belief and a bad attitude, what's that going to do to your potential? Are you going to continue to draw on this unlimited potential, or are you going to say, maybe my potential isn't unlimited. Maybe it is limited. Maybe because of where I was born and where I live now, or how much time I have to dedicate, or whatever other excuses that we make that basically make us draw less of our potential. And then what happens? We go and we start doing even less action. And then we get even worse results. And it's just like this never ending. And that's why I call it, he calls it the success cycle, but it could very well be the destruction cycle in the way that I'm describing it. But then you flip that. You have unlimited potential. You start taking action and you take the correct actions, which is identifying who your customers are, creating your brand, your value proposition, all of these different actions. You go out, you start hitting the market, both with passive and active marketing efforts, and all of a sudden you start seeing results. And when you start seeing those results, what does it do to your attitude? I know what it does to mine. When I've had sales and I've had weeks where I just am like slaying it, you know, going out there and like everybody I'm talking to, they're like, yeah, absolutely, here's my money. And I go home and I'm like, pat myself on the back. I'm so happy, I'm so excited. And what does it do? I start drawing more potential and start doing more actions, and I start getting more creative. And I'm like, oh, so there's an event happening on Thursday, but I'm free on Friday, and where I was just going to BS around with my friends, instead of going and doing that, I'm going to go do this other event. So I take more action, and then I get more results, and so on and so forth. So this is what happens, and he describes it as the reason why the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, because they fall into that cycle. So I don't know where you guys are individually in this cycle, but it's very important that you identify where you are and start to make the changes in these 4 categories, and you'll start to see that your sales, your life, everything in general will start to improve. Now, we have 5 minutes left. So I'm almost done. Books on selling. I've read a lot of books. However, I will tell you that these are the books that I think have provided the right motivation for me. They've provided the right information for me. These are all really excellent books, and I would tell you to go out and buy them. All right. The Seller Be Sold by Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone has a number of really excellent books. I love them. This one really, really got me hyped up because it basically tells you that whether you want to get involved in selling or not doesn't matter. You're either going to be the person selling or you're going to be the person that people are selling to. And you're much better off being the one that is doing the selling. So that book is great. How to Master the Art of Selling. This was one of the first books when I started working way back in the day. You could tell it's an old book because holy cow, that photo. But my very first job when I started to do sales of cameras, I worked in a camera store like this. And I read that book because what happened was the most senior sales guy that worked there basically told me, stay away from the camera section and the camcorder section because you don't know how to sell. And that was like the most money that you could make in commissions was selling those things back at that time. It's not like that anymore. But so I said, you know what? I want to learn how to sell and I want to learn how to master that. And oh my gosh, how to master the art of selling. I got to read this book. And I read it and it was amazing. It gives you tips. They give you closing techniques. It tells you how to prospect. Some of the questions you were asking earlier, they cover in that book. And then this other book from Daniel H. Pink, To Sell is Human, The Surprising Truth About Moving Others. This is another thing. A lot of this stuff is just your mindset. We have sometimes a very limiting mindset that we're not good enough, we don't know enough, whatever the case might be. And I hope that through this presentation today that you guys understand that if you don't know enough, the resources are out there for you. If you feel like you can't do it or you're not well-versed enough, there's books, there's information, there's YouTube videos, there's blogs. There's a lot of places where you can reach out to become a better photographer, a better business person, a better entrepreneur. So with that being said, I want to invite you guys. I put my social media links up on the screen. If you guys are interested, definitely follow my work. I'm usually here at least once a year at Adorama, or once a month at Adorama. This is one of the first events that I'm doing where I'm just talking for 2 hours, but oftentimes I will end up shooting and showing you guys how I shoot my headshots. So I would definitely invite you to come back to that. Also, if you search my name on YouTube, I didn't put the link here, but if you search Miguel Quiles on YouTube, I have my own YouTube channel as well, where you can check out my work. So with that being said, I want to thank you guys for hanging out. 2 hours is a long time to sit. So hopefully I gave you guys something that you can leave with and improve your sales. And I will check you guys out next time. See ya.